Hi, welcome to another episode of From Here to There. Tonight we have Linnea Bast. Very happy to see you, Linnea. This episode obviously is being recorded. We may have some students who will drop in as we go, and I'll certainly let them in if that happens. But what I'd love to start with is to just observe that this is your journey that we'll be talking about. And obviously, the journey started when you decided to go to the stamp school. So tell us, what made you decide to go to stamps?
For sure. So I am from Philadelphia, and a lot of the kids from my high school stay on the East Coast. And I was looking around the country, but it was really my mom's friend who graduated from stamps who thought I would be a great fit for the art program. She reached out to my mom kind of randomly and was like, I know Linnea is looking for a school that has a really strong art program, but also has other departments to kind of, I was looking to round out my education and not just go to an art school like a RISD or a Pratt. And she knew that and really put Michigan on my radar, which was amazing. And so I went to the state for the first time with my mother, and I'll never forget because it was dead of winter. She thought I would hate it, and it was February 14th, and we were crossing the Diag on a tour, and this group, which was so cute, is called the Random Acts of Kindness Club, was giving out roses. And just like all of these little moments of me coming to campus where I remember parallel parking and no one was honking at us. And it was just like the Midwest vibes were everywhere. People were giving us sweet things. People were letting us park very gracefully. And then I went to the art school and got to meet different students that were there and got to see the artwork and see what the professors were teaching. And I just fully fell in love with it.
Yeah. Did you end up getting a BFA or a BA?
I got a BFA.
And what year did you graduate?
2015.
Oh, wow. So 7 years. Good for you.
Isn't that wild? I can't believe it.
Do you have particular memories that are like really special to you?
I do. I feel like, my senior thesis, I think, was my favorite work. And being able to present, I don't know if the gallery, I don't think it still exists because I came and visited campus this fall and I didn't see it, but right on State Street, there was an amazing stamps gallery, and I got to put my senior thesis in there, and that was just felt like such a huge accomplishment to, like, in the center of Ann Arbor, get to have my work displayed with other students from stamp. And so I think that was a real highlight for me in school.
Yeah, so the stamps gallery has actually moved since then. And is in a much bigger space.
Oh, cool.
It's like maybe 3 times the size of the old stamps gallery. So next time you're in town, you'll have to take a look.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah,
Very
that would
cool.
be awesome.
And what was your senior project?
So I was redesigning. At the end of my career at Stamps, I was doing more product design work. And so I was redesigning the paper flower bag. Because of my mom with celiac disease, and having flour in our house was always trouble. It was always difficult for her because you open the bag and there's just flour everywhere. It's always leaking out the side. And so my senior thesis was redesigning that bag.
And for those who don't know, celiac disease is basically a wheat allergy, right?
Exactly. Yep. It's an allergy to gluten.
Okay. Very, very good. So sometimes you're in a class and you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, why do they make me take this?
Oh, yeah.
And then years later, you can have an aha moment like, "Oh, that's what I learned in that class that I hated." Have you had moments like that?
Oh, totally. There's so many. So with my work right now, in the beginning, I was really having trouble figuring out the materials that I was going to use that were unique to me. And the different adhesives that I use and the different kind of underlining structural elements of my pieces. And I think, was it called, let's see, concept, form, and context,
Yes, yes,
CFC?
yeah,
That was, or, somewhere in that order, but those classes really taught me a lot about, materials and the form versus function, and that, I think that we really did those in our first couple of years at Stamps, and I thought those were really great. And some of them were really hard, like what was the class where we went through the wood shop, you went through the metal shop, you went through every single department? Getting those baseline skills in all of those different mediums was really useful, because I'm considering, for a piece that I'm pitching right now to a client in New York, I'm considering using a wooden backing, which is something that I would probably be nervous to use or to experiment with a material like that, without having exposure to it in college.
yeah, yeah, for real. And because Stamps has so many different facilities and so many different sort of media that
Mhm.
you can expose yourself to, you can kind of pick and choose, what do I like, what do I want to keep going with.
Exactly. And one thing in college, so I thought I really wanted to be a fine artist traditionally, and in a sense I am, but I'm not a painter by trade. And so I think if I had been in a really structured program that made you kind of select a discipline or a medium and then stay with it, that then I wouldn't have been able to discover kind of the world that I'm in now of biophilic design. So in a way, that was a total blessing, that, you learn everything and you deep dive into a couple different departments, but still have the exposure of all of art and design.
Yeah,
So
for
that's
sure.
been
You
useful.
had an internship while you were in school?
Yes, I had a couple. After my freshman year, I interned at anthropology, which I think is pretty common. So I was doing the window displays, and that was really fun because I was working with papers and natural dyes and building 3D forms and using different mediums. And then after my sophomore year, I did spring term, so I don't think I had an internship that year. But after junior year, I interned at the Philadelphia Museum of Art as a graphic design intern.
Yeah, yeah. And what were your takeaways from the experiences outside of the classroom?
Do you mean my internship experiences or
All of the above.
all of the above? Um, let's see. I think, well, outside of the arts classroom, it was really great for me to have exposure to some of the classes within Ross. I In 2015, the entrepreneurship minor existed, but it had just started. And I think I didn't find out about it until it was a little too late in my career to get all the credits. So I ended up just taking a bunch of different marketing and communications is within comps, but I took different marketing classes and a couple other business classes to round out my art degree. And in the end, that was super beneficial for me. And especially now, because I work for myself and have started a small business as an artist. And so that was really helpful. And then my internships are always helpful to create a larger network, to see how people in the real world use their art and design skills, to just see what kind of jobs are out there.
Yeah,
It's all really, really
ex-
helpful.
yeah, excellent. So Were you a part of any student organizations?
I was, I'm trying to think of that. I mean, I was in Greek life. And so I was a member of a sorority and was in charge of on their executive board. So I did the marketing and communications work for that. I was in some sort of like honors thing that came with that. I can't remember what it was. And then feel like I was more involved than that, but now I'm kind of blanking.
No worries.
I don't remember what else.
No worries. I think that although what you learn in class is important, I also think that the experiences you have outside of class really prepare you much more for what's going to happen after you graduate, which brings us to your senior year.
Yeah.
And you already talked a bit about your integrative project. Tell me more. What was that last year like for you? How were you preparing for what would come next?
Yeah. So now I thought about it for a little bit more. I do remember I was involved in, it was some sort of marketing communications club that actually my best friend was running, Judy Sue. And I was able to do through that club marketing for a local business in Ann Arbor. And I think it was one of the restaurants. And so for that senior year, I was really gearing up to just get more on my resume and be able to learn some more real world skills. Because I mean, throughout my time at Stamps, I came in, thought I wanted to be a fine artist, then was like, oh, I need to be a graphic designer because that's how you get a job after graduation. So then I started in that direction, then realized I didn't actually like it that much. So I moved, especially after my internship. And so then I moved more towards urban design, which is what I studied abroad for in Copenhagen. And I loved that. But, you know, urban design, landscape architecture, you have to go back and get your master's. And it started to feel like a really big undertaking. And so then I got really into product design, which I loved, but kind of discovered that all a little too late to get a job in product design. So I ended up then leaning a little bit more back towards the like graphic design marketing world when I was looking for jobs because I was more qualified for that.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, ended up in a very surprising place.
Right. What was your first job after you graduated?
So, the story behind it's very funny. So I think the way this happened, I worked for IBM, and the way this came to be was it's, you know, the early spring during my senior year. And I am loving my product design thesis and just having a grand old time, but trying to figure out what I'm going to do after graduation. And I was in my house and a friend of one of my roommates had walked in. She was an engineer. She was like, oh, I just got a job offer at IBM. And I was like, oh, wow, like that's a great company. How did you get that job? Like, did you know someone? Was it through networking? And she was like, oh no, I just applied online. And I was like, ah, fabulous. I'm just gonna walk myself over to Ross. So I walked across the street, went into Ross, sat down and applied online. And I ended up, so I applied for the graphic design business consulting. And they flew me to Atlanta for an interview, which had actually gone into my my spam mail. And so luckily they followed up and they were like, hey, did you see that we want to interview you? Luckily I saw that. So I went to Atlanta, and because of my portfolio, so I pitched my portfolio, and also within my resume, I talked up my classes with Roth as well with my stamps classes. And they offered me a different job. because of my background, they offered me regular management consulting. And what was great about that was I could choose anywhere in the country I wanted to live, and I got paid a lot more. So I took that offer.
Yeah. I gotta tell you, I love that you adapted your materials to the opportunity, because as you might remember, I am a broken record around relevance. What is the purpose? Make your materials relevant. So I love that you did that. Good for you. Um, did you get hired before you graduated?
Yes.
Yeah, good for you. That's not typical. So that's amazing.
I think it was last week of school. I think it was very much at the end, because I remember still being on campus, and I actually had a different job offer that I had to decline. And I remember being very, very nervous about that phone call, and I was sitting in the Stamps parking lot. So thank you.
So in terms of that first job, how long did you stay there?
So I stayed there for 3 years. I was very excited to move to New York with all of my friends, and I actually ended up living with Judy Sue, who also graduated with me from Stamps, although I believe Judy was dual major. So I think she got her BFA though. I think she did an extra year. And she is now a rock star design director here in New York and just killing it. And I stayed there for 3 years. I learned a ton. I'd say consulting is a really difficult lifestyle, because I was, back in the day before the pandemic, you're traveling every single week to a client site. Some of my projects were more design related, because I could kind of pick and choose what I wanted to do. Some of them were more strategy related, but they were all good learning experiences, and I had a lot of great growth. I'd say the people at IBM are amazing. I interacted with some of the nicest, caring people that were really smart and were helpful to young people in corporate America, which I was really surprised by. I thought, it's a very old school company, but I had an amazing experience. It wasn't work that made my heart sing.
Yeah.
So I often would talk about how I separated I'd be like, oh, I'm really happy in my life, but that's not my work. And so I would just kind of compartmentalize things to make it work. But coming out of college, it was so amazing to have a job, be able to be financially independent in New York. And so I had that trade-off for the first couple of years where that was the choice that I had made. But as I've gotten older, I have shifted in my mindset.
Did you ever need to negotiate salary?
Yes, I did. I think I didn't with my initial offer. I think I just took the general consulting offer. And then I got promoted once before I left. I was going up for my second promotion. I do, in hindsight, wish I had taken the second promotion before leaving, but it ended up being, I was moving across country for my partner. And at that point was really looking to leave. So it was a nice excuse to leave the company and not insult anyone and just be like, I'm moving across the country. Because there's still contacts that I keep up with now, and I still really love and appreciate. But for my next job, I did negotiate a salary, which was hard.
Yeah. What advice do you have for students around negotiating salary? Because I think it can be really intimidating.
Of course, I'd say, the worst thing that's going to happen when you ask is that they say no. They're not going to take away your job offer. because you negotiated. I think people will be impressed that you're advocating for yourself. And especially as artists, it's so easy for companies to be, to have unpaid internships and to, not pay you what you're worth because you're an artist and you're not coming out of like an accounting program or something. So it's important to negotiate. And the nice thing about negotiating is, you can do it via email too, so you don't have to have the conversation on the phone if you're really nervous about it. And you can have someone, look at what you're sending, and you can have it be a little bit of an iterative process before you send it out. The worst that they can say is no, and at least you have the experience asking for more. I do think I had the conversation over the phone for what I wanted in regards to negotiating my salary. Yes, I had it on the phone, and I think I was able to negotiate like $10,000 more with my startup. So after 3 years of experience, I think I negotiated $10,000 more with my base salary. And then since it was a startup, I also got equity.
Wow. Yeah. So when you were a student, how much did you take advantage of career resources, either me or the Career Center or even Ross, which you talked about? How much did you take advantage?
Oh, I definitely met with you a good amount because I was nervous about, I think I felt like my parents were so amazing. I shouldn't say letting me, but like encouraging me to go to art school. And so I had this pressure from myself that I really wanted to graduate with a job and to be like, hey, I went to art school, but I graduated with a job, which was really important. So for me, but really hard. So I definitely went to you a lot. I researched online a lot through the Career Center. And I did not use Ross at all, I don't think.
Yeah.
I just sat there and used their space to work.
Yeah. If you're not a student there, it's kind of hard to get into their career office, but just in case, I figured I'd ask.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were at IBM for 3 years. So that takes us up to like 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
And then the next job you already mentioned was with a startup.
Yeah.
What was the startup?
So I was really excited about this next job because, as I mentioned, I studied abroad for urban design. And so this next job, I thought I would be doing kind of urban design, landscape architecture work, because the company's original ethos was to build community-oriented neighborhoods and to have these spaces. So the way the neighborhood would be built is that the cars would not go over walking paths. And so the cars would all kind of be in the perimeter, and you would have food forests within, and you would have walking paths for elderly, and you would have all the mailboxes together. So it's kind of like a watering hole in an office where everyone kind of interacts and overlaps, and it's all community oriented. And so I was really excited to help build that aspect of the urban design of these communities. Since I joined the startup as I think it was the second employee, it was too early on for them to actually build a neighborhood. So I ended up doing mostly just operation work for them during the 2 years that I was there. So I didn't really get what I wanted out of it. But like everything, it was a good experience.
Yeah, you always learn something. So what came next after that?
As I said, knew that this was not really the role that I was looking for, which was hard because this was my second job, and now I'm 5 years out of school, and I was like, oh man, this still isn't right. And I looked back into going back to school for landscape architecture. had a lot of interviews with people, and it's a ton of money to go back to school. And then I think like the median salary coming out is $55,000. And it's 80 hours a week of work. And I heard some really tough stories, and I was like, oh no, this isn't going to be able to add up for me. So I ended up going back to school part-time in San Francisco for horticulture, which was amazing. And the world of plants blows me away. And so I was part-time at the startup at the beginning of 2020 and part-time in school for horticulture. And obviously we all know what happened in March. And with the pandemic hitting, you can't learn horticulture that well online. And I ended up leaving San Francisco, trying to take my classes virtually, and decided that I was going to start my own work. And the original idea for my business, Linnea Botanicals, was creating living walls. And so while I was still in San Francisco in school for horticulture, I'd also gotten an internship at a company called Habitat Horticulture that builds living walls all around the West Coast. And so I learned a little bit from them and was like, okay, I will attempt to start my own little thing. And that evolved while I was trying to get off the ground into having a lot of conversations with potential clients who wanted pieces of, they wanted the look and feel of nature that you would get with a full living wall, but without any of the maintenance. And so that brought me into the world of lichen and moss, which is the work that I do now. So I create large scale art pieces out of nature that don't need any maintenance.
And who are your clients for this?
Yeah, so for the most part, my clients are residential. I do a lot of high-end residential in Florida. It's a great market for me because my pieces can live outside in a very specific setting that has a lot of humidity, like Florida. So there's a lot of cool outdoor living room, loggia spaces that are unique to that area that my work really thrives in. And I am currently trying to move more into the world of a little more corporate. So I have 2 pieces that I'm installing at a company in Connecticut in the next month or so. And then today I had a huge, fingers crossed, a huge meeting with a client in Hudson Yards, New York. So that would be in one of the big office spaces. It'd be a big install. Yeah.
Wow.
But we'll see.
Yeah. I dropped a link to your website into the chat so that anybody who's on the call right now can just kind of see the amazing work that you do. Also, if the students want to be in touch with you, what is the best way? I mean, because there's contact info on your website, but
Yep.
is that how you like to be in touch?
I think, honestly, I am so I will do a pitch for Instagram. I'm on Instagram all the time because that's how I get almost all of my clients. It's unbelievable what a resource it is. It's also a huge time sink and hard, but if they reach out to me on Instagram, I will respond very quickly. You reach out to me via email, I will respond. It just won't be as quick.
Yeah. So I just dropped a link to your Instagram in the chat, so people can follow you, message you, etc. Through that. What I would love to do, if you're up for it, is what advice do you have for current students?
For sure. Hard. I feel like at the end of the day, it's hard in the beginning, but really follow what makes your heart sing. I think there's nothing worse than a job that you don't love. And you're in art school for a reason. I know a lot of people, you don't necessarily need to have X degree to have Y job, but if you go into art school, there's a reason generally that you're there and that you're passionate about art. And there are so many of my friends still, I'm almost 30, and I have so many friends that really, really struggle with finding their passion in their work and have tried so many different jobs and have had career coaches. And luckily, as artists, we know that we're passionate about art or design or something within the field. So I would lean into that, even though it's a unfortunately a harder career path, because it's not like, engineering where you just become an engineer and there's 10,000 jobs and they all pay well. Like, that's lucky if you love that. But if you are an artist, I would lean into that, and do a lot of interviews. I feel like for me, before going back to school, and luckily I didn't for, landscape architecture or doing other things like that, really glad that I interviewed people. And it's amazing what just, messaging someone on LinkedIn or messaging someone on Instagram will do.
Yeah,
People want to help. At the end of the day, it's fun. I have people reach out to me that I've never met before on Instagram, and we just get on the phone and I'll, help them with whatever I can. So especially if it's if it's an alum, or if you reach out to someone that went to Michigan, you have even more of a connection. People are totally willing to help. And I think, if I remember correctly, Judy, who's my best friend from Stamps that I mentioned earlier, I'm pretty sure her first 2 jobs came from her messaging people on LinkedIn who went to Michigan.
yeah. And
So.
I remember Judy. Um, I guess I remember you as well. And I think your advice is really solid, especially when you consider that you ended up where you wanted to be, even if that isn't where you started. And I think it's very important for students to recognize things are not instantaneous, and it's a journey, and but you ended up where you need to be, and that's the important part. Not to think, oh, I guess I just have to start at IBM. No, you don't.
Right, you
But
don't.
you can, but you don't have to.
Yeah. And for me, what was really helpful, you do this in art school a lot. You keep a journal, you keep a sketchbook. I would really lean into to journaling, and there's different aspects that you learn in school when it comes to a project about, themes and different things that, make your heart sing or whatever it is. And you can take a lot of those practices to your own life, because you are in yourself a project. And for me to get to where I am now, it took a lot of dedicated days. I remember being out in San Francisco, having a day off of work, and it was a holiday and I didn't have plans. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to rent a car, drive to a beautiful spot. I would drive to like a Mendocino area, sit down with my sketchbook and write and sketch and go through I also would take all of my old sketchbooks from college and from the years past from high school and look at all the patterns throughout my work and try and figure out what was repeating and what was really inspiring me throughout my life to get to where I am now. And it's amazing. Most of my pieces in college ended up having to do with nature. They were sustainability oriented. Like almost all of them had natural elements. And even going back to high school. And so going through all my journals, I was like, oh my gosh, there's all of these patterns. I love horticulture. I love sustainability. I love X, Y, and Z. And so it led me to go back to school for horticulture and to combine my love of plants and my love of art and design into what I do now.
Yeah, Han Mai is loving what you're talking about.
Okay.
Thank you, Han Mai. So one quick thing, tell us how you got from San Francisco to New York. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I was in New York for 3 years while I was with IBM. Then I moved to San Francisco for 2 years. And then which was actually, I would not recommend San Francisco for an artist. It was really cool back in the day, but now it's such a monoculture of people in tech and engineers and product managers that I think it's kind of a defeating. You feel so different from everyone that it's a hard environment for an artist or anyone doing anything different from the norm of tech. So when the pandemic hit, my boyfriend at the time and I left San Francisco and actually ended up at my family place in New Hampshire, which is surrounded by forest. And for me, I was just taking walks through the woods all the time and continuing this journey of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And there was moss and lichen everywhere. And I was like, wow, this is such a cool form. How can I use it? And so YouTube is a great friend, and I learned how to produce, sustainably harvest and to preserve moss and lichen. And that's still what I'm doing now. So it was, oh, sorry, how did I get to New York? So from there, that was a free place to stay for a while during the pandemic. And then I ended up going down to Florida for a while because I've got a grandparents down there. So I was able to, and my sister living down there. So my fiance and I were able to live there for free and kind of learn about a smaller art market. And so that was really helpful because it's way more affordable. I have cousins that live down there too that were really helpful in getting my work in front of people. So I did some work for family down there. I did some work for friends of friends that heard about me through word of mouth. I entered an art show in Florida. I got my work in a gallery in Palm Beach. And then you meet other artists. I became friends with artists, and having that small world of South Florida art compared to New York was really easy to kind of do a step-by-step, how can I build my career within this market?
Wow.
And so then from there, eventually my fiance was starting a company, and his co-founders are all living in New York. And I love New York and wanted to move back. So we moved back here in April, and I got an art studio in Long Island City.
I used to live in Long Island City.
Nice, awesome. It's great. It's such a cool spot.
Right by Astoria Boulevard. Very cool, very cool. Linnea, I want to thank you so much. I encourage the students to reach out to you, hopefully via Instagram, but also maybe a little more slowly by email if they want. I've also dropped a form into the chat, so if the students could just take a minute, click on that survey, just so that we have some feedback on how things went today. Again, I apologize for my laryngitis, but it's been so delightful to see you again. I'm so grateful that you agreed to talk with us, and now we'll have you, for posterity since this is recorded. Any last words?
I think, the life of an artist isn't easy, but it is so rewarding to get to do what you love. And there is such an interesting world art world out there, in so many different places. I'd say New York is obviously a mecca, but even these smaller communities across the country are just beautiful havens of art where you wouldn't expect it. And what's amazing is with the world of Instagram, I'd say even if you are living in somewhere that is much more affordable than New York, which I would probably recommend because it's hard here. You can ship your stuff all across the country, which is what I tend to do. I ship work all around the country, and with Instagram, people all around the country and world see your work anyway. So even if you're living in a smaller community that doesn't have a huge art scene, you can still be a really successful artist. So I wouldn't let that limit you. It's not always location, 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 because we have phones.
I love that. Linnea, thank you so much. And I wish you a good night.
Thank you. Thank you.